But again, a lot of those we cover within inspections. Okay, so we really, as the transaction has progressed throughout the years, we perfected it, I think, as best we can to protect buyers and sellers and fairness. So, okay, so let's get into kind of the nuts and bolts of like handling inspection days. Okay, how many people here like to be at the inspection during inspection day when you represent a seller? Okay, like a lot of people. Okay. Now there's more than one way to handle inspection, and I'm going to tell you my way as if it's the only way, but it's not the only way. It's the only way I do it, but it's not the only way. So there's more than one way, obviously. But a couple things I do. I first of all always bring a bag of cold drinks and usually some snacks, you know, not just for me, but for my buyer, if my buyer is there, and also for the inspector. We want a happy inspector, right? So you bring that. So what else would you bring? Anyone? What else might you bring to an inspection?
Measuring tape.
Measuring tape, good.
You represent the seller or the buyer?
We're representing the buyer here.
Oh, buyer.
Okay, so it might be
like
vacant.
this.
Bring a table and a chair. You might need a place to sit, right? I mean, and you're gonna need to be there and work for a while. So I have kind of like I don't know, I call it kind of a four-step thing. I meet the inspector at the property, okay? I let him do his thing, okay? Just go do your thing until his inspection is completed. I bring work to do. If my buyer wants to come, I'll say, I usually don't have them come for the entire inspection. I might have them come a little bit early. They may want to take pictures or do measurements. Maybe it's a good time that they have a contract they want to get bids. That's a good day to do that, okay? You want to accomplish as much as you can in one day, okay? So you can do that as well. Now, so again, I usually don't like them there for the whole inspection, okay, or you're not going to get any work done that you need to get done, but have them come before it's good. Make sure they're there before it comes, and maybe a little bit extra time for them to go out and kind of have fun with the property and take pictures and things like that. So after the inspection is completed, I like to have the inspector then go through what I would call the actionable items. And what I usually like to do, some inspectors will just kind of point them out. I like it if they'll walk me through. So we've left the inspector alone, okay? And at the very end, what we're gonna do is we're gonna have him explain everything to us. I love it when we walk through with the buyers, we can see what it is. Because a lot of things, if you just get an inspection report, it's all you get is the inspection itself. It's so darn scary, right? It really is scary.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it looks like, I mean, you get this thing and it's like, oh my gosh. By the way, I'm gonna show you how that's gonna work to your advantage later. But it looks scary. But when the inspector walks through and he kind of says, oh, look at this and this and this, and the buyer might say, is that a big deal? I go, no, I just want to show it to you. I gotta find everything. His job is to find every single thing. And we want them to do their job well. So some inspectors I think are better than others, but the ones I want are the ones that are good at what they do, and the one that doesn't overreact anything, okay? And getting a good inspector is very important. It's just as good as getting, you know, a good lender or a good title person or escrow person. It's good that you get your whole team and everyone's good at what they do. So we show up, we go through the buyers. I like to take notes as I'm going through with the buyer. You're not gonna have the inspection yet, or going through with the buyer and the inspection, but you may wanna take notes on what's going on, what he says, things like that. Sometimes I'll even put a quote mark where he said about this, okay? Just so you have that later. Then what I like to do is I have a certain process that I do, and it's called debriefing the inspector. So I wanna ask the inspector two things. Every time I ask him the same two things. First of all, would you suggest any more inspections are needed on this property? Okay, I'm not the one that should tell my buyer when inspections are needed. That's not my level of expertise. My level of expertise is here, and his level of expertise is up here. Now, I've been on over 2,500 inspections. I've been to a lot of them. A lot of things I know. I'm probably as good as a rookie inspector almost, but I'm not an inspector. I don't know. And if you haven't done 2,500, you probably even know less, okay? So you want to make sure that you ask if there's any more inspections. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to ask about three specific things. This is kind of the Ed thing, but it's the three things I think are the most important because these are the three things that can be the most costly. One is, tell me about the roof. You may have talked about it, but tell me, I want to know everything about the roof, okay? The second thing I want to ask about is, can you tell me specifically about the drainage, okay? drainage. It's the second most crucial thing on a home, okay? And the third thing I wanna do is talk to me about the structural integrity to this property, okay? Those are things in order that can cost you the most. In fact, when I look at a home, and many of you, years ago, I took you through a home and I said how I look at a home when I go through it with a buyer. First thing I do when I come from the street is I look at the roof. I wanna see the whole roof itself, just the field, the ridge caps, just to see if there's anything you can kind of look. Does it look new, does it look old, whatever. I'm not doing an inspection, okay? But it's amazing how much you can find from just that. Then I'm also gonna look and see, what's the drainage look like? Drainage can be very, very costly. Poor drainage to a house can cost you $200,000. If water will subrogate that property and you have movement, it can be big. Now, it's usually not that much, but it can be big. And so I like to see, do they have drains poured out to the street? Do they have the weep screen? Do they have all the cement below the weep screen? Because if they don't, that can be a problem. Does it look like the drainage is draining and things like that? So I want to know about the drainage, okay? And the third thing I want to look at, and you can kind of look at it, just about the foundational, aspects of the property, the structural integrity. Okay, when you look at the fences back there, are there separations? When you look at the house, are there stucco cracks? By the way, some stucco cracks are not a big deal. Others can be a very big deal depending on what they are. If you walked homes with geologists before, and I've probably done that on 20 or 30 times, you get an education of what to look for because they tell you what they're looking for and they tell you what they find and what they didn't find, okay? But you probably won't have that much knowledge early on about these things, but you will learn that over time, but you don't need to learn it over time because you're gonna ask very specifically, what's the roof, how's that? What's the drainage, and what's the structural integrity of the home? Now, one of the most common, I'll ask you guys this, what's one of the most common phrases the inspector will give you when you say, what would your overall impression be of this home after the inspection?
It's got good bones.
Good bones, right? Good bones, okay. Good bones means that, hey, the house itself is good, and you want to hear that. Now, you also want to not hear that. Lynn had an inspection recently. The inspection came out really bad, and honestly, now she found herself another buyer, and that's already closed, and the home was great. But literally, the inspector did us a favor, right? I mean, had they bought that home, there was things we couldn't see, and this house was basically, a pig with lipstick. I mean, the house was terrible, but they put lipstick on it to make it look good. But what we could not see was horrendous. I mean, what they could not see. I didn't see the house. But again, so we want to find out if we want to know this stuff. We're there to protect our buyers. Remember, we tell our buyers and our clients three things, okay? We tell them that we're going to save you money, make you money, and protect you, okay? And so we want to protect them. That's the whole idea. So again, a lot of times they'll say, hey, we got a lot of items on here, but he walked you through them and you saw they're not really a big deal. And I like to ask questions when he takes you through the repairs and things like that, or the actionable items. Because if you can ask those questions, then again, this will help you a lot during the negotiation of repairs, okay? So, and then ask specifically about the area, what he thinks about it overall, which is good.
And,
Okay, yeah.
Excuse me, on the drainage, how can you see if it's draining to the street?
Well, if it's draining to the street, there'll be, if you go out and you look at the little monuments that are in the curb, that shows you where the property lines are.
Right.
Inside those monuments will be it'll be drilled out and poured out, and that'll be the drains.
Wow.
And if you can see that water is there right now, it means that it's probably draining. Okay, but even if not, usually those, when they're cored out like that, I've never seen a home, I don't think I've ever seen a home that had core drainage to it that didn't have good drainage, because that means it was put in by somebody professionally, almost always, okay? But when you look around, and like say for instance, if you go look at a brand new house, okay, what you're gonna see in that brand new house, where there's no hardscape done to it, you're gonna basically walk to the side of the house and you're gonna see like this little V-ditch, okay?
Yeah.
This little V-ditch is gonna be, it's draining away from the one house and away from the other property into an area here. It would just drain into the curb, but just on top of the soil. Okay, so they grade that to start with that in there. But then you have buyers that go in there and buy the home and they do the do-it-yourself, cement jobs, and they cement all the way to the top and it'll actually rest on it. Now, if the cement is laid before the weep screed is protected from that point down for 18 inches, or 12 or 18 inches, and so water's probably not gonna permeate there. Although if it sits there for long enough, it might, okay? But above that, if they lay the cement above that, guess what? It's gonna come right into the stucco and you're gonna have damage. I've seen that many, many times. and it's usually done by people that do-it-yourself cement jobs, okay? But these are the big things. Usually, if I get a good report on those three things, on the roof, and even the roof can be negotiated sometimes, and then the drainage, and then the structural integrity, usually you can put this thing together. But sometimes you can't. I mean, there's sometimes you can't. And when you have problems, especially with structural integrity, I always tell my buyer, walk away. You know, this is a big deal. We don't know. Even if you fix the structural problems to it, the property's moving, okay? It doesn't have foundation that it had. And, you know, great foundations go back to biblical towns. You need to, you know, build your house on a great foundation, right? So, again, that's very, very important.
Excuse me, should we
Yeah.
ask you a question about the drainage after you're done?
Absolutely. You can ask me now if you want.
Oh, well, I had a buyer that he purchased this property, and I always throw the drainage inspection for a few $100s.
Mhm.
I think it's totally worth it. So my client chose to have the drainage inspections, and the report came out that everything is draining great. So personally, myself, I saw a drainage in the yard that it was filled up with dirt. It was totally filled out with dirt. So I questioned that, and I'm not gonna bring the name of the inspector because I know a lot of people here, they use him.
Okay.
So they told me this is just a dummy drainage. So after the buyer purchased the property, this is like $25,000 later.
Yeah.
So I knew something was going on, but obviously I just don't know, like next time when this happens, how could I handle it?
You know what? When we rely on people that are not supposed to be special at what they are, the only thing we can do is get somebody who knows what they're doing. And you learned from that one time, you did everything you could. You hired literally the person who's supposed to be the expert in that area, and they blew it. Guess what? You can't do anything. And that's why we pass on liability to these people when we say, listen, you need that person. The liability to us on that, the only way I could see that we could have any liability in that would be if we had referred that person several times before, and every time he said things were great and we had problems later. And they can prove that we're actually giving that inspector's name because we knew he would say everything's okay.
No, he's amazing, I can't say that.
Yeah, so you can't. So
Right.
you haven't, you know, you did your best and it didn't turn out. So, you know, I've done that too. I'm sure I've done things before that I thought was I did everything I could and it doesn't work. I mean, you're sitting at a red light and somebody, you know, hits you from behind. What could you do? Not be sitting at the red light? Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's like that. That's what happened to you. You're sitting at a red light, everything was fine, and somebody, you know, ran into you. You can't change that. Not your fault. So, but it also makes my point that drainage can be expensive. Yeah.
So, in that event, I mean, does it put us at risk if we only recommended one drainage person, or should we give them a couple of different people that do
Okay.
that?
So here's the thing, I'm gonna make a statement on this, I'm gonna go be bold on this, because I know that a lot of times, in fact, when we've had attorneys talking, they'll say, always give 3 names of people, okay? Listen, what my clients want from me is they want one good name. They want me, who's in the business and I know, rather than saying, I don't wanna take any liability, I'm gonna give you 3 people, you call and see what you think. No, they want you to hire professionals and know professionals. If you don't know somebody's good, put it on our team page and ask, or our company page and ask for a good one. And that's at least getting a recommendation. It's better than going to, you know, the internet, or we used to say the yellow pages. Most people don't know what that is. But, you do, Ruth. But, yeah.
Me, my grandma does.
Hey, still we
So,
get it delivered.
yeah, so again, we do the best we can. And I like to personally give one good person and say, this is the person I think is very good, because our clients want me to take them in their, you know, in my hands and make the money, save the money, and protect them. And I do my best to do that. And the best way is to give them a list of people to do the job. And I don't know anyone.
Are you
The
willing
best
to
is
share
to
that
get-
name?
Pardon?
Are you willing to share that name?
The name of who?
The inspector,
Oh.
your favorite inspector.
He's talking.
Well,
hypothetically.
Oh, no, I'm just talking hypothetical, yeah.
Right.
You know, a lot of
What he
people.
used to do back in the day.
Yeah, well, I
He
haven't
does
done
know.
this
He knows
stuff.
the
knows
yellow
no one now.
pages
He
now.
knows no one now.
Hey, listen, I was
Gotta get it back.
I was gonna retire when I was
Good for you.
55 years old, which is a long time ago, and just, you know, whittle wood on my front porch, but I had some people that said, I want to be on your team and I want you to teach me, so I'm stuck doing this now, so. By the way, I love what I'm doing, I absolutely love what I'm doing. So, that's the idea of, I don't disagree with somebody who says give them 3 names. I would also say this, if you don't know of somebody, and let's say you go into and you know, our page and say, ask for somebody for, inspectors, you get 3 of them, maybe give them 3 because you don't know them, or maybe you call and interview the 3
Ask
and then
questions.
give your clients, I interviewed all 3, this is the one I felt best with, they were just referrals to me, so they know exactly where it's coming from. Or you can say, I've used this inspector forever and ever. I outlived 2 inspectors. I was on my 3rd inspector when I quit doing real estate, but the first 2, I literally buried it. So, I mean, they died, you know, after they did work for me for 15 or 20 years. So, but they were good. They were awesome. So, anyway, that's what I would say. So I think it's good to have your actual specific, you know, referral person. So, okay, so we debrief the inspector, okay? And so I also want to just make a kind of a quick call here. If you're going to do a termite inspection, and now it used to be that sellers always did the termite inspections, and it was customary that sellers will take care of all Section 1 work, and the buyers would accept Section 2 work. But now more and more buyers are doing their own termite inspections. I actually like it when the buyers do their own. You get to recommend an inspector that you trust, okay? And then the other thing, why not do the termite inspection the same day as the home inspection? Because when you're there, guess what? The termite inspector comes through, and then he finds Section 1 work oftentimes, and he can show you that where the boards on the roof are you know, have dry rot, or where the posts didn't have cement underneath them, or he can even show you there's 4 spots in the attic that I found termites, and this is why I feel like they're inaccessible. We need a fumigation. Okay, so the whole idea on this is that we want to, more than anything else, when we're at that inspection, do the termite inspection or any other inspection you can do that day. Now, a lot of times, remember, I generally did not recommend inspections to my buyers, additional inspections, unless the inspector recommended it. Because I want to remember, we're going to make you money, but save you money, and we save you money because, listen, this house, this drainage is beautiful. To go and do a roof inspection, we don't need it, or a roof inspection. This roof is beautiful. I took my ladder up there. You know, all the roofer's going to do is say it looked great. So, so we try to do every inspection we need to do, but we don't want to do any inspection we don't need to do. Okay, I use the same thing I would use for a client as I use for me. If I would want that inspection, then I want them to have that inspection. But if I'm buying that and I'm not going to spend extra money for that, then why do it? You know, we can easily spend an extra $2,000 or $3,000 in inspections and we go nuts, right? So,
So,
okay.
quick question on termites, so you wouldn't suggest to the seller before listing it that they have a termite inspection?
They might, if you represent the seller, you may want to do that, okay, to find out what you're gonna have to deal with, and then get it done. That's not a bad deal, but remember, I'm talking about from the buyer's perspective here. I certainly don't mind, you know, paying the $125 to do a termite inspection. I stay away from the free termite inspectors, only because I think they have a propensity to wanna find work to, you know, not be out there for nothing.
Right.
You know, if you do a termite inspection, an inspector does it for free, he does it for a net loss because he must pay to file that with the California Structural Pest Control Board.
Right.
So literally, he's out that 35 or 50 bucks, not much, but he's out that money that it costs just to file with the state. So, and then he gets nothing. So guess what? They really want to find work.
Right.
I want them to find every piece of work they should and not one piece of work that isn't there. And then they also, not only they find it, they might bid it a little bit higher knowing that, you know, the inspection was free. Just my theory, I'm not against like people that decide to use free termite inspections, that's okay, just not my style. So, you know, it's kind of like you get what you pay for, right? Yeah.
One of the things that I found representing the seller, like for termites, is if they have the patio covers, the wood patio covers in the backyard, I always recommend having a termite inspection done before you list the house. Because I've had multiples now where it's much cheaper to tear that whole thing down and remove it versus repair it.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a good, or balconies too, right? I mean, you could literally,
Yeah.
you know, sometimes, although.
Balcony's hard though when there's a door.
With the door there, you step out to nothing. But that's a good, I think from a listing agent's perspective, I'd like to do a termite inspection. But if I'm representing the buyer, in this case that we're talking about, I have no problems with having the buyer pay for the inspection, even looking at it from their perspective. I was the buyer, that's how I look at it, so.
So do you think if the seller is providing, you know, they're saying, yeah, we're gonna do the termite, do you hire your own termite guy as a second
No, I generally would not. If I got a termite inspection on that, and they said, here's the inspection, we'll do all section 1 work, unless I felt it suspect.
Or you could just see stuff. that they're
Yeah, and you
involved.
can see stuff. And the inspector, you can also say, if you have a termite inspection, and when you go through the inspector, give that inspector a copy of the termite inspection. By the way, the termite inspector checks for 3 things. He checks for, infestation, dry rot, or fungus. That's all they check, those 3 things. Okay, and that's the things that actually the inspectors don't necessarily check. But you can give the inspector the termite inspection, say, I've got a termite inspection on this, just if you want to look at it before, you can, that'd be great. If you find anything else that's above and beyond this, let me know. Okay, so you can do that. And generally, again, the sellers will take care of section 1 items. Section 1 items are anything which would be active infestation, dry rot, or fungus. Section 2 items are anything which isn't active, but conditions that could lead to, any of those conditions. So, okay, so what are some additional inspections we can do? Just throw them out.
Mold.
Mold, okay, what else?
Sewer,
Yeah, good one. Common, what else? Roof, yeah. HVAC, right? Plumbing. Solar, absolutely.
Moisture, which is kind of part of mold.
What? Chimney, that's one. I hate chimney inspections. They always come up with stuff but I hate them, but sometimes you need them.
You guys say pool spa?
Pool spa, that's the common one. A lot of times the inspectors will do the pool spa. A lot of times you need a separate pool spa inspection. Asbestos, sometimes air quality. A lot of the inspectors now will go and take moisture readings in there, and the moisture readings come out good. I don't think you really need to have a mold inspection if you come in and all the samples are good. They just bring their little moisture detector around. I wouldn't, but I know some people are super sensitive to that, then maybe they do that. So those are some of those. You can do an structural inspection, get a geologist. I've been a few of those are fun. Asbestos. When is asbestos a problem?
When you
Before
touch it.
1977.
Huh?
Disturb it.
Well, before 1977 is when you're gonna see it. But it's actually when you disturb it. Asbestos undisturbed, no problem, okay? Can be there forever. Disturb it, can be a problem. Now, you're probably not gonna get asbestosis. I actually just had somebody call us right now, and her husband just died from asbestosis. And he was a dentist. Actually, he was what do you call the people that do the big stuff in the mouth? Not
Oral
the
hygienist.
oral surgeon. And I guess in the training, they used to use asbestos and stuff like that. They use this, so, I don't know.
Really?
Yeah,
I never heard that before.
yeah, they were one of the first 2 people to live on the lake. Those 2 houses that were there forever. Anyway, that's sidebar. But moisture and drainage is another one, things like that. So again, ask the inspector, see what they need. If you've got a good inspector, I rely on them. If you don't, then get a good inspector so you can rely on them, okay?
One more question.
Yeah.
When a house hasn't been repiped, there's not really any way to tell, like if nothing is dripping, there's no way to tell if it needs repiping, is there?
Yeah, well, the best thing you get is you get this SPQ and the TDS, okay?
Right.
Because they should have put, and this is the one thing I train our team, that if you had a plumbing leak in there, even if it goes back a few years, then I want to disclose that. Now, if let's say you had a roof leak in 5 years ago, and you went and had the roof redone, not redone, but you had it patched up really good, I don't disclose everything you fixed over all the years. Can you imagine if you lived in a house for 30 years, how many things you'd have to disclose, repairs? And if you start going down that road of repairing, of disclosing some things you repaired, then you need to go down the road of disclosing everything you repaired. But the one exception I make to that is water leaks and things like that, for 2 reasons. It might be in your clue report with the insurance company, and you want to find out, you want the buyer to find out from you, not from a clue report
Right.
by his insurance agent, because they immediately will be suspect of you. And the other thing is the disclosure item should be on there. So occasionally that does come up.
How far do you go back?
Pardon?
How far do you go back on repairs?
It depends on how big the leak was, okay?
Okay, as far as disclosures, as far as repairs, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years?
Let's say, for instance, it was a shower drain, and they went in there and completely redid the shower drain. I might disclose that for a couple of years, not beyond that, because it's fixed, it's done. If somebody did complete piping, they went in there and put new PEX in or something like that, I want to disclose it because it's an upgrade to the property. Okay, but if you had 2 leaks in a property and you haven't replaced the PEX, so you just went in, and what they do a lot of times is they will short circuit the piping so and just put new piping on the area that they need. You need to put that down there because the buyer kind of needs to know that they probably got about a $10,000 item coming up pretty quick. Could be $6,000, could be $20,000, depending on the size of the home. to repipe a home, so,
Don't you
yeah.
have to get a permit for a repipe?
Yep,
So if they say, yes, we repipe, is it necessary to call the city
so it's,
to get the?
the BIA says the permits are the responsibility of the buyer, and I always like the buyer if you wanna know about permits, but you can ask the sellers if they have any permits. I think we go down this dark road of permits sometimes, so we're trying to get all permits and everything. If you ask any city what should be permitted, they're gonna tell you everything should be
Everything.
permitted.
Right.
Money,
And there's a
money,
lot of things that you do,
money.
like, I got a hot water heater in a couple of years ago, and I permitted it, cause I would do that. A lot of people don't. When I buy a house that a hot water heater wasn't permitted, yeah, I do an inspection, the inspector's gonna tell me it's the code and everything. I'm not gonna say you have to have a permit for that. You put a sprinkler system in your yard, you have to do a permit. I mean, you have to put, now, I put windows in my house fairly recently, I need that permitted, that's a big deal, right? But you kinda have to draw the line what you do and don't do, and a lot of times, permits, if you ask them what you need to permit, everything. You put new faucets in your house, technically you can ask them to permit it.
That's true.
So, okay, so some of the additional inspections. So how to represent inspection day when you represent a seller, okay? A little bit different, this is a little briefer, but always make sure the inspector has the number of you or the seller. Have to have this, big deal, guys. Because the inspector gets there, they can't complete their inspection because of certain things. Just recently, inspection was done, we had this come up on one, and the inspector is doing the inspection of, they have a spool, a big, spa really, not as big as a pool, bigger than a spa, it's a spool, right, out in Rancho Mission Viejo, and the inspector said, I don't know how to turn all this stuff on. Yeah, I can't.
Yeah, it's so challenging.
So guess what? We had the seller's number, called the seller turned it on remotely, and it was all good, okay? But there's things like that, or they might have questions. You need to have the seller on semi-standby, so if we have something on that inspector, and so I think it's also good from if you represent the seller, to show up for the inspection, usually later in the day than what you might as the buyer, but still show up later if there's something, and also let them know that they can call you and you have contact with the seller if you need to answer any questions, because unless you can get on that inspection report because you were there to answer questions, the better. Can you imagine if they'd said you have to do a complete pool and spa inspection and the buyer had to pay for that? They're gonna be pretty upset because they couldn't tell you how to turn on the equipment. Yeah.
Access to a detached garage.
Yeah, access to detached garages, all kinds of stuff like that.
Power.
So here's a tough call I have. When you have a seller, do I want the seller at the inspection? That's a call you gotta make. A lot of times, no, okay, but occasionally, depending on my seller, if I have a seller who I think might get a little rattled, no way. But if I have a seller that says, listen, I want this house, I take real pride in this house, if there's something wrong, I wanna know what it is, I'm gonna fix it. Then I might say, come to the inspection, we'll walk through it. I've had those go very well before. I just give you, kind of a warning there. You gotta make sure if that's your seller, that you want you do it to the right sellers, you don't do that to everybody, okay? I would probably do a more sophisticated seller, somebody who's taken pride of ownership, who really wants this house to be delivered in a good condition, so he can see right away what there is. I've had sellers before walk through and the inspector goes, I'll do that, I'll do that, I'll do that. I mean, right there, I'm gonna take care of these things. But if you have somebody who's gonna basically like to try to deflect everything or get mad, don't do it. And that's probably more people than not, so. Yeah. So.
What are you talking about?
Huh?
No, I was
Oh,
just
what are you
saying-
talking about?
No.
I have a lot of people ask me that
Yeah,
question,
what are you
so.
talking about?
Yeah,
um,
exactly.
For someone who likes
My
their
house is perfect.
My house
For
is
someone
perfect.
who likes their house,
Nothing wrong with it.
the inspection report is like calling your baby ugly.
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I had a seller insisted on being at the inspection, and halfway through I had to ask him to leave.
Yeah,
Yeah.
could ruin the deal.
Every little thing, he was like, no, it's not.
Yeah, and so, that's really why, there's some handouts for over here. That's really why I like to be kinda a little careful with that.
That was the only, wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, would I ever do it? Yeah, but with just, kind of a notation, be careful, be careful. Okay, so what can buyers expect sellers to address, okay? So in California real estate transactions, inspections issues are handled more by negotiations than by strict rules. There really are no rules. Show me a rule. There are no rules. I'm doing my best to give you some rules here, but these are just loose. Don't take this to any seller or any buyer and say, this is the rules of the road because I got these from Ed Wright. because I don't want that.
That's right, though.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
coming.
But there are common, expectations and marketing norms that guide what buyers and sellers often agree to, right? And so there's things on here, and so I'm not gonna go over these things right now, but I want you to have this, keep it, I would scan this and put it in there. You can hand this out to buyers and sellers if you want, you can say, I've done my best to compile a list. By the way, go through the list, if you don't like it, change it, okay? This can be your list, I don't care. My name's not on it, that's for sure. So, and here's the couple examples I have, and it's even noted in here, that when the market is different, so does the climate for repairs are different. So any market where the average buyer has 5 offers, is the seller likely to do more repairs or less repairs? Less repairs, okay. Same thing with if it's a market to where we get in, you haven't seen this for a long time. Most agents in this room, there's a few here, okay, but I can point to them that we've seen markets to where it was considered a buyer's market. I mean, you get an offer every 4 months, you'd be excited, right? And sometimes you fix a lot of things. And in this climate, and especially climate maybe 3 or 4 years ago, you might not fix very much, okay? So, but here's the best I can do to come up with what's generally customary. And like I said, if you don't agree with it, make your own list. This is just my recommendation. It's not absolutely in stone. So, okay, negotiating inspection. If there's one thing I'm talking about today that's the most important of all, it's this, okay? So when I represent a buyer, I always want to send the inspection to the seller ASAP. Why is that? 2 reasons. Why?
He knows what's coming.
So he can get the anger out, right? Like,
Yeah, that's one. So there's an old saying. This is a really good saying. That and this is a good one for you guys to know. You leak bad news and you spring good news. Okay? So this is a way to leak bad news. Now, every inspection is bad news, by the way. Just really, pretty much. I've rarely had an inspection, somebody say, I can't believe there wasn't more on it than that. That's not, because like, I can't believe all the things they found, right? That's what everybody says. Have you ever had a seller say, oh my gosh, I thought there'd be a lot more on it than that? No, I don't think I ever had that. So, again, like, I love what Brent just said, it's like calling your baby ugly. Okay, that's just what's happening. So, you're calling your baby ugly and you're gonna put it in writing, okay? So here's your ugly baby and here's all the things wrong with it, okay? And so there's 2 reasons you do that. One reason is you want to leak bad news. You want to get that to them as quick as possible, okay? And it's also a sign of respect. So as soon as I get that inspection, usually the next day, some inspectors literally send it to you while they're there at the inspection. They've done it and they just literally, but as soon as I get it, it goes immediately to the seller's agent, okay? And immediately goes to my buyers, so they have a copy as well, okay? Now they'll be there, but usually the inspector will send them a copy too, but I'll make sure they have a copy. Then, okay, before I ever make repair requests to a seller, before I ever make them, I want to call the seller's agent. By the way, the best work we can do in negotiations, guys, is to be talking with the other agent, not just send repair requests. I can't believe how many people want to do, let me just send a repair request and we just throw everything out, and the deal falls apart and they wonder why. Well, the deal falls apart because they're terrible negotiators. You want to be a good negotiator. Good negotiators can do good deals for your buyer. So you sent the inspection, okay, and now you can start this negotiation prospect. And there are 4 options to every inspection, okay. You can ask for nothing, okay. That never happens, but that's an option. You can ask for repairs. You can ask for a credit. Or the 4th one is you can ask for credit and repairs, okay? And so those are our options, and we need to talk about those options. Now, and again, that's, our options. Now, always talk to the other agent before we send the RR. And I'm trying to do 4 things, okay? I always like to put things in numbers. I want that other agent, and hopefully I've already done this, to like me, okay? So when I'm talking to them, okay, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say, Mace, if Mace is the other agent on this, I'm gonna say, Mace, so we got the inspection, did you have a chance to review it? Now, you're gonna almost always say no.
Delete.
And so what I'm gonna say is, okay, well, sounds like you didn't have a chance, I know I just sent it to you yesterday. And here's what the language I usually use. My buyer looked at the inspection, we were there with the inspector at the end, and although there's a lot of items on there, my buyer still likes the house, even though they might have been a little disappointed in all the items that are on there. So Mace, you and I need to find a way to put this together, because I know my buyer doesn't like all the things on here, and I know your seller's not gonna like this inspection, you know, because it's gonna be like calling their baby ugly, right? So that's a good one to use from now on. It's like calling your baby ugly.
I patented
Okay.
it. Can't
But,
use it.
yeah. But your baby is ugly, and so we need to deal with that. So what we need to do now is, let's work this out as best we can. I wanna put this together, you wanna put it together. We're gonna kinda have to bring our buyer and seller together. I've got some room to go, you might have some room to go too. So, can you work with me on this? And then and let him say it. He goes, no, I'm not gonna fix anything. It's like, really? I mean, okay. And so the next thing I'm gonna say is, you understand you have an inspection that I sent to you, and you know what that means? That means the next buyer gets to see that inspection too.
Exactly.
You think you're gonna have better luck with the next buyer? I've got some pretty darn good buyers, they're pretty reasonable. I mean, after all, they didn't walk away after they got this inspection. Okay, they're still in the game. You know, I would just suggest, I know that if I were in your situation, I would tell my seller, we need to stay in this game. Because the next buyer not only gets this inspection, they may wanna do their own. And if they find another, and do you think there's any chance there won't be anything on the next inspection that wasn't here? Plus we got this one. It only gets worse, okay? That's the way I go at it from a buyer's, you know, point of view, okay? So that kind of makes sense?
What if we tell them also, if the house falls through the escrow, that's not the best thing, you know? The next buyer wanted to know why you fell through the
Yeah,
escrow.
why you fell out, see the inspection,
Exactly.
and yeah, I mean, you know, technically they don't have to tell them why, but you technically do have to disclose everything that affects value or desirability, and when you do that, that's where you get in that trouble there, so, okay.
Question, Ed, I
Yeah.
had this come up, do you absolutely, if the buyer who paid for the inspection doesn't want somebody else to see it, like another buyer, can they literally say, I don't want anybody else to see this?
Yeah, but it's not to their benefit, it's to their benefit to have the seller have this responsibility. It's two reasons I sent it. First of all, out of respect, I sent it right away, you leak bad news. And the other thing is that it's in your buyer's benefit to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, if you had a low appraisal come in, and you wanted to try to negotiate renegotiate the purchase price, you better send the appraisal.
Right.
I mean, same thing here.
No, I meant, so the buyer's walking away, and then the seller doesn't want you to send that inspection report to the next buyer, but you have to do that, right?
No, it's up to them. We've given it to them, they can do what they want, we've
No.
walked away.
No, no,
I think
no.
you're misunderstanding.
Does
So-
the seller have to go to the next buyer?
Yes.
Yes and
You
no.
have to disclose.
The
That's the
technical
question.
answer is no,
Unless they ask.
but the real answer is yes,
Yeah.
because they must disclose everything that affects value or desirability. So they must either disclose everything that's on there, and how do you do that? Give them the inspection.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lynn?
And if they try to pull a card that, hey, I have backup buyers or I have other offers I could
It's
just
not the
pull from,
seller's.
do they have a ability? Or does the seller have the disclosure responsibility to tell you that during escrow when
Yeah,
they do
my,
that?
my call would say, I understand you have backups. Backups are backups for a reason. The reason this is here is because this was our best. Do you think the next buyer's gonna look at this differently? I've already told you, I'd say this nicely, that my buyers wanna be reasonable. They're still in the game.
Yeah.
We have somebody still willing to put this together. Do you wanna start this process all over? Have to give them this inspection, they might do their own inspection, it only gets worse. Okay, all that's true. Yeah, Jonathan?
The RPA does require sellers to disclose all reports that they have.
Yeah.
We ended up doing it, but the seller fought me on that.
Yeah.
Well, but they
Yeah.
can fight you all they want, but, you know, if you go to the inspection part of the contract, okay? I mean, that's 14, I believe, so you can go in there and it's gonna talk about how they have to make those disclosures. So, and they also, if they've done any repairs at the close of escrow, have to give the buyers all the receipts and things like that, the estimates, so, yeah, good, yeah.
I had a situation this recently. I had a client that I sold the property, he fixed it up, and he was gonna sell it. I told him to get a pre-inspection because they're gonna come in and see that it's a flip property and they're gonna tear it up, right? So I got the pre-inspection and then he spent 2 weeks to fix all the little items to
Mhm.
get it really clean. Like it was like 98% clean. The one thing that he didn't want to address, which was still existing, was there was a not to code gap between the deck railing and the flooring of the deck. So I was like, well, they're gonna call that out, so we're gonna have something that they're gonna come back to us. Sure enough, the one thing that when we get a buyer, we get an offer, it was a great offer, they get an inspection to see where the misalignment was, and they called out the deck. Now, where the situation was the buyer was insanely emotional about the report coming back, right? The inspector found all these little things. I mean, the email was, the deck is going to fall off the house.
Right.
And I was like, have you seen any other houses on the market that actually, like, we cleaned up everything we could. And so how would you, I guess, handle, cause I was a listing agent, how would you handle that situation where you have a very emotional buyer really kind of out and just.
It's twofold. First of all, we set expectations of buyers before we start. That when we do the inspection, you're gonna find so many things you have no idea. And I tell them a story that my son bought a new home years ago in Rancho Michigan. He's bought another home since then, a bigger one. But I said, and I went on the inspection with him, and we did the walkthrough. We had 25 items on that just the inspector, the general on the property said, yeah, well, we still need to do this, still need to do that. So you're gonna find all these things. So it's two parts. One is prepare them to start with, that there's gonna be a lot of things on there. So we set their expectations. Set their expectations that not everything's gonna be repaired. And then the third thing I would say is let's isolate this, into, is it worth losing a sale over this? So first of all, what is the dollar amount it would cost to repair that? Did you have an idea?
So I was the listing agent, and I had a buyer's agent that I was working with. So I didn't have direct communication to work with the buyer. It was basically just me kind of telling the listing agent, or the buyer's agent, can you get your client under control? Is this realistic, is this a material fact?
Yeah, I could, if you gave me more the pictures and more to it, I could take a look at it and tell you more about it. But that's what we do, is we bring, two people together. This is like bringing the US and Iran together right now. I mean, it's not easy to do, but hopefully it'll be done, right? I mean, but if you set their expectations up to start with, there'll be a lot of things on there and no seller's gonna fix them all. And this is one of the things they don't, then that's gonna be, I think, one thing. And then the second thing will be is to try to break it down that it's really just a dollar item. It's a budget item. It's not a deal killer.
Yeah, I tried all.
And to his point.
By the way, sometimes we just fail. I mean,
Yeah.
we can be the best. Not every hostage negotiator has got every, hostage out. That's just not the way it works. No.
On setting the expectations for the buyers, Ed, how do you, like, when I have, first time home buyers or somebody who hasn't bought a home in a long time, I try to explain that a lot of things will come up. I go, but each buyer should have 5 years life of something. Because I've had this as a listing agent, when they come back and say, oh, you need a new roof, and they want the whole cost of the roof. So I set the expectation of a buyer that even if it needs a new roof, we're not gonna get the cost of a whole roof. We would get 5 years life cost.
Yeah, so that's what happens. So you have, let's say, for instance, a hot water heater, and you can get 2 reports on it. One, it doesn't work at all, okay? So that means you might get a new hot water heater, but you might not get some other things, because you didn't expect a hot water heater that has a 20-year life. You expect one that had 5 or 10. Therefore, I'll meet you in the middle and pay for half of a new one. You can buy whatever you want. I credit you X amount. Or if you have one that's near the end of its life, you might throw them a bone, but you're not. It's near the end. Who knows when the life is at the end? So I think buyers' expectations are only. So this happens, and you might go in there and say it needs a whole new roof. So the seller responsibility isn't to pay for a whole new roof. The seller responsibility is to prorate them, like Bruce said, enough of what would be, a partial life, or maybe even half or a quarter, but not all of it.
This is key for buyer's agents to explain this to their buyers. Because that's how a lot of those situations happen. They don't have control over their buyer because they didn't educate them properly, and they think they get all this money back.
I have a feeling, Jonathan, had the agent on the other side been more skillful, this would have been put together. You can only be so skillful, and you can only protect against stupid so much. And when somebody's stuck in stupid, sometimes you're not gonna free them.
Yeah, definitely.
Lynn, did you have something?
I do, yeah. I guess from my experience, when it comes to even inspections, like anytime the sellers are representing themselves, or like a close family member who's trying to sell, I think it just creates a lot more problems and just very unexpected things to deal with. But I guess my question is like, in terms of like risk, where our agents, we're trying to best represent our clients' interests, and like what are ways we can do to protect us so that our buyers in the future or our sellers don't try to say, hey, you should have known these things and you should have done this for your client. How do we protect ourselves from that?
We protect ourselves by getting professionals that know more than us to do inspections and recommend further inspections, and then we negotiate those inspections the best we can. And that's all we can do. And then after that, remember, We're not perfect. I mean, we're gonna do, but again, if we ever get sued on something, and I had over 2,500 closed transactions, never got sued once. Now, did I ever make a mistake? Yeah, I either paid for the mistake or tried to find a remedy to it, or it was so small it didn't matter, but did I make mistakes? Absolutely, so. And the fact that I was never sued, do you think that's because I was good? I think it was because I think I was pretty good, but I was pretty lucky too. Honestly, you go that many without getting sued, then there's some luck involved in it, yeah.
One question, had a listing that the place was built in the early 90s, so in the bathrooms, it didn't have exhaust fans because it had a window. The buyer came in from Illinois somewhere and insisted that he wanted exhaust fans. The seller said no, so the deal fell apart.
Yeah, same thing in like 1990. 1990 is when the GFCIs became a rule that they had to have them in every room as opposed to just the main GFCI. So we're not responsible for retrofits that are not required. The only retrofits required in this area, now like in Laguna they want toilets and things like that, but in most areas of Orange County would be your smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, and strapping of your hot water heater.
Okay.
Those are the only required retrofits. In other words, if it didn't meet code, no matter when it was put in, you still need to do that. Nothing else is retrofitted, so, yeah.
But if the house was built in 65, there's no GFCIs, and they completely remodeled the kitchen, then they should put in
Yeah.
There's-
Yeah.
yeah,
Code
not
of
only
the
that,
date
then
of the
there was a time where
remodel.
first switch had to turn on the fan and things like that, so, yeah, if you do remodels and you remodel certain areas,
Yeah.
then more code things come in, so.
It's only code of the date of the remodel. If they remodeled
Right.
before that
Right.
date,
Right.
then they don't need those,
Right.
so.
And here's a theory, if they remodel and they have permits, then it should have been covered, so.
Yeah.
Okay, so, let's just, process this when I represent a seller, and this is an easier process, really. I usually start this process before I give somebody the final counter. So I'm gonna give the final counter and I'm giving it to Max, and I go, Max, I've got a final counter for you, or let's say we're gonna pick your counter, but before I send this to you, I wanna talk to you about one thing. If we go with you, okay, the seller, if there's something that we haven't disclosed, there's something major systems and things like that, we'll work with you on it. But are your buyers the buyers that nitpick us on everything? Because if they are, we'll probably move on to somebody else. So what I do is I lay the groundwork right then with that counter offer that, listen, we're gonna go with you, but you need to kind of give me your commitment that you're not gonna ask for things that are unreasonable, okay? So guess what? I'm setting expectations already. It's all about setting expectations. Life is so much about setting expectations. So does that make sense?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's great,
So-
I like that.
Okay, so, now, representing a seller, my goal is to get a dollar amount. Okay, why do I want the seller to give a dollar amount rather than have to do repairs?
It's easier.
Because we don't know what the buyer's expectation of a repair, to
Yeah.
fix the drywall, what does that mean?
They gotta look at it, they come out like I was fixed, like, blah, 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 blah. It's just more potential problems. But from a seller, we know we've already set the upper limitations of what we have to do. There's your money, it's all yours. And now we're also not responsible later if it wasn't repaired to the highest degree, okay?
Or something
So-
else could go wrong. Just
Yeah,
give them
something else
money.
could go wrong,
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so, that kind of gives you an idea of negotiating. So reducing the risk and ensuring transparent. There are times when a buyer may wish to waive inspections. I only bought maybe one home in my life where I didn't waive inspections. But because I've got to remodel them completely and I understood that, so I felt comfortable. But if you ever do that with a buyer, they want to make sure that they take care of that disclosure. I think it's the BIW, is that what it's called? I think that's what it's called, the BIW, that they wish to waive the seller's obligation to disclose. And then put it somewhere in writing. That disclosure does it for you, but also let them know that you strongly recommend inspections. Not to do an inspection, I think, is foolish. So I always recommend a proper inspection. Amy?
Ed, I've done 2 new home purchase, and we've done inspection in those, and the builders do fix things from that, so.
Yeah, now, and so I just got asked the question the other day, somebody on the team that wanted to do that, I said, okay, that's a tough call whether you do one with a new home or not, and here's the reason why, because you have a warranty period. You have a warranty period of a year, they're gonna fix everything anyway, so you'll find out. But is it a bad idea? I would never tell a buyer it's a bad idea to do an inspection on a new home. If I were buying a new home, I probably wouldn't. I'm gonna live there and find out what's wrong. But not a bad idea, not a bad idea.
Can't
Even on a
really
new home.
see
Even
what's
though
in
you have
the
that 1
attic.
year where the builder stands behind it, so, yeah.
Yeah, it's just because I would do one, Cause you can't see what's in the attic and behind certain things.
If you get it's easier to get.
If you get an inspection on a new home, can you, and you have a warranty period, can you take that and get those fixed throughout the warranty period from the initial inspection? Or
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're working, new home, I've never seen a new home builder, their reputation is really important. Guess what? There's more people moving in after you, most likely,
Yeah.
and they want you happy.
I don't know.
They're a lot better than the average seller, trust me.
I don't know.
So, okay, final walkthrough. This is, guys, I'm gonna wrap up on a couple pages here. Final walkthrough, guys, this is where we can really make a big deal. I strongly recommend that when you do a walkthrough, make this process out of it. Everyone on our team knows this before. So the first thing we do, you need to conduct this walkthrough in the property. It's an opportunity to get your verification of property signed, but that's not the most important thing. I'll kind of share my system. First of all, you guys want to come up later, you can take bigger. This is a checklist I have when I go through a walkthrough. Whether I represent seller or buyer, but especially when I represent buyer, this is my checklist of everything I take, okay? Now, sometimes these may not be needed, okay? They may not be needed. If you want to take a picture, I'll leave this up here so you can come later too. But here's what I have for our team, and I think you guys want to share this, you could do it too. I have a team, I have the blanks here, and this is just a walkthrough inspection. And here's what we do. There's a whole lot more you do in a walkthrough than just a walkthrough. Look at all the things that are on here. The escrow will be, close a possession will be, utility company should be contacted, and you have the seller and buyer there if possible. All four are gonna copy this sheet. You can't see this, but these blanks are because I have a sheet that you can fill in the blanks, so it's an interactive sheet. And little things like don't forget to reset the garage door opener when you move in, trash day is certain, home protection plan service number is, file the change of address with the post office because you want to make sure mail is transferred to them. Approximate time of mail delivery and location of the mailbox. These are things that buyers should know. So when you get together, you'll check and see if the repairs are done and things like that. But do all these things and make sure they get the house rekeyed. You put it on here. These are things that we should do. I also have a form that people on the team where it's called important dates coming up that we give to when their next payments are coming due for their taxes and their homeowner association and their mortgage, things like that. But this is, I gotta tell you, Karen Quinn has an assistant, and her assistant is a gal that I referred to her to be her assistant, okay? And Monica, Tina's her name, and she bought a house in one of my listings one time, and when she went to sell it later, she called me. She goes, I was so impressed with how you did. I just saw you along with the other agent at the walkthrough, and I just saw, you're the agent I want to list this house the next one. And she literally called me, looked me up and called me, and I sold her house when they sold it. So again, and I've had other clients do that too. This is your chance to impress, but more than that, it's your chance to do it right, okay? So, okay, just a couple additional comments and we're gonna have some lunch. Don't look at inspections as a burden, look at it as an opportunity to connect, represent, and impress your clients. Here's some of my favorite quotes regarding inspections. The inspection doesn't kill deals, it reveals the deals worth doing, okay? The second one, at the end of the day, our job isn't just to help our clients buy a home, it's to make sure they don't buy a problem, okay? And the final one is, the best agents aren't the ones who avoid problems, they are the ones who solve problems. So, hey, questions on things? And I'll be around after if you guys have questions too. So, yeah. Go, Vinny.
Okay, before I joined the Regency, I worked in another agency, and we were taught to, when you are a listing agent, you should get all the inspections done, and that could help with the sales, especially if they are cash buyers. So I just wanna get your recommendation, because I know a lot of agents here, not a lot, but some, they are against it. What are
Well,
your
I'm
thoughts?
not against that. I think that's a call. And like Jonathan said, they did the pre-inspection. Some sellers are gonna say, I'm not gonna go to inspection, that's the buyer's problem. That's a personal decision you have to make, but I think sometimes it can be really good if you really wanna get top dollar for a home.
Exactly.
And if you see things that they might see as they're walking around, why not take care of them? It's not a bad idea. When I was in real estate, I actually did not do that, okay? But, I'm not in real estate now, I look back and it's not a bad idea. I don't think it's a bad idea. But I would look at the temperament of my seller to find out if this is one I wanna do this with. Or are they gonna get mad because they have to do inspections, and you mean I'm gonna have to pay for the inspections? So, yeah, I'm not against that, so,
Okay.
yeah. Okay, Jonathan?
Thank you.
I always thought I'd found those sellers that would have a big problem when the buyer finds all their things. Why don't we find the things wrong with your home and leak the bad news before it's even on the market?
Yeah.
And even if he says, no, I won't do it, but now the emotions are flushed out. Like the flipper, obviously they're done, their crews are gone, they just want it sold for top dollar. But I'm like, if we want your profit price, we want this price, it needs to be worth that.
Yeah, and what I liked about what you said earlier is he did a pre-inspection. So he doesn't have the inspector come and do the whole written down inspection. Say, I want you to, somebody comes through, I want you to kind of inspect it, write down what we need to repair. Tell me what it is, I don't want an inspection. Just write it down, walk me through it, we'll just repair them. You don't want an inspection report, right? You just want a kind of a pre-inspection, it gives you some notes on things you can fix. And that way it's a pre-inspection and as opposed to having another inspection you have to provide. And it's a lot cheaper. They don't have to go through the inspection. Just walk through, find out what you can, write down the things that you think we should repair to put this in the market. Yeah, Joy?
Okay, I just dealt with this, so I asked my inspector for that, and maybe he's like, maybe more strict, but he was like, I can't do that. He's like, I can't do like
A verbal.
So get a handyman who knows how to look through a house and knows houses really well, that come and say, I want you to go through my house and I want you to do a pre-inspection. I'm not looking for an inspection. By the way, the same guy that will do inspections, a lot of times not the guy you want doing repairs, because they know how to inspect, they've been trained, but they don't really know how to do them. I'd find a good handyman. I don't know if that's what you found, Jonathan, but more of the handyman
Is
guy.
that what you're saying, Jonathan, that you are paying for a non-formal pre-home inspection, or are you
So
saying?
we got a formal report.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jim?
We got a formal report, and the deal was that we're gonna address these issues, and then you'll come back and redo it for free, and then we'll make this kind of white and black, like this was where we were,
Yeah.
this is where we're at now. Now you can have confidence that this is what.
That makes sense, cause you just had people doing work, so you can get those people back to fix it.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So I asked my inspector to do my home, and he was like, my own personal home I'm selling. And he called me and was like, listen, I've worked with you a lot, like, I consider you a friend. He was like, I wouldn't recommend doing this. He's like, I'll tell you why, and you can kind of weigh the pros and cons. But at the end of the day, he was like, the truth is, like, you can get, as a seller, home inspection, you can give that to the buyer. He's like, they may not even look at it. He's like, they're just gonna.
So I would, and by the way, this is
I really
not,
wanted to get it. I
by the way,
really
this is
wanted
not what I'm saying, like, this is how you need to do it.
Right.
There's different opinions. I think after kind of, what I would do today, which I didn't do when I was selling, is I would, if I felt like the seller would be willing to this, I'd try to get a handyman who'd come through and be able to do kind of, and do your inspection, don't write it down, just give me a list of what needs to be repaired, let's pick those things. And then later we'll do the thorough inspection, we'll deal with that. Just to knock a lot of these things down, not to perfect it, but get a lot less. So if they got an inspection, remember inspections have either between 5 and 50 items on it, so instead of getting 50 items, they showed up with 6. Then they're easy to deal with and maybe you're done with it, so.
Yeah.
That's what the Zachars brought up. God, that was like a couple years ago. They have somebody come do an inspection, but not written up. And then they just fix those items, so then it's looking better. So there's no report to give. It's just kinda like what you said, a handyman-ish.
Yeah, so kind of, sometimes the inspectors don't even do repairs.
Yeah.
I want somebody to do the repairs and say, well, this is gonna cost you this will cost you this. That would be the ideal person,
Yeah.
so. Okay, so Lynn?
Quick question, in a normal market where we don't have foreclosures, do you recommend us just following up with our buyer clients and saying, have you rekeyed your home locks?
No, I wouldn't, I think we give them the sheet, we tell them to do it, and that's up to them to do it. I'm not gonna follow up on that, but, I've done it one time. And if you get in this idea that you're gonna tell them twice everything, they're gonna expect you to, you tell them twice anything, they don't wanna tell them twice everything, so. As long as you do it once and say, remember, we not only tell them to get it rekeyed, we get them a locksmith on number there. I think we've done a job more than almost every other agent does, so. Okay, so I want to talk about our last training we're gonna do before our summer break, and we'll renew our trainings in September, is gonna be the most requested training I ever did. I did this just before COVID, and it was the most requested ever. I had more people come up afterwards and said, this was life-changing. I literally had people coming up in tears with me after this and said, I needed this so much. It's called Mastering the Mental Game of Real Estate. And I gotta tell you, after all, the most important part of real estate isn't the market, the contracts, it's not the clients, it's the 6 inches between your ears. And I gotta tell you, it's kind of like a lot of times, when you have new mothers that have babies and stuff like that. Once in a while I ask them, I say, especially when they're in real estate and stuff. In fact, some of the people on our team would ask me this question, like after their babies are like 6 months or a year old, I said, well, how many times have you locked yourself in your closet and cried? And they go, oh my gosh, how'd you know? Well, because every mother does that at some point. I mean, it's tough, it's a tough change, right? So it's kind of like this, and this is the same type of thing. This, if I've ever done a training that I think I'd say you only come to one, this is it. It's gonna show you how to take care of the mental part of real estate. It is a mental game. I honestly think the people that fail in this business are 2 reasons. They have no motor, okay, well, a few reasons. They have no motor, and they have no map, and they have no ability to process this business. When you process this business right, it is amazing. I see people on our team that are experienced, they've gone down the road, everybody got smashed in the nose. You had to get your nose bloodied a few times in this business to kind of like it, okay? I don't know, Melanie, this is like your first introduction to kind of real estate's like. That's the truth, I'm just telling you the truth, right? Is it great later? Yeah, okay, but do you have to get your nose bloodied a little bit? Absolutely, and you'll cry in the closet. There's almost no agent here, no female. The guys won't even admit it, but that you didn't lock yourself in the closet and cry one time over one deal, okay? So, by the way, some of you I've been on the phone, we've cried together. Maybe I didn't cry, but, so, anyway.
When is that training, Bill?
That's gonna be on the 27th of May.
Oh, okay.
We'll be back to that last Wednesday in May, so. Okay, guys, thanks, I'm here afterwards, and there's food ready, so go out there, let's get the food, and thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Hey,
Hey,
Lynn,
Carl, they got some food to go. Want a plate? Let me help you?